Usually, whoa, that was so loud. Usually I have to calm everybody down, but the internal alarm clock for everyone seems to be working this morning. Just make sure we don't have anybody walking in. All right, good morning, everybody. Go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 6. That's where we're going to be picking up this morning. We're going to be looking at verses 12 through 26 in different chunks as we go. Luke 6, 12 through 26. So for those of you that were here last week, we looked at verses 1 through 11, and just a quick reminder, we saw two Sabbath incidents that sort of created points of conflict among Jesus and the religious leaders. In the first one, the disciples are walking through grain fields and taking a snack, basically, and they got in trouble for threshing and harvesting and doing intense agricultural work. The second instance was Jesus healing a man with a withered hand, and our big takeaways of those points was that there were some things I think Jesus was trying to get them to see. There's a concern about elevation or even blending interpretations and traditions of the law to the same level as the law. So when they ask, what's really lawful on the Sabbath? Jesus is trying to get them to see, you're not really worried about the law, you're worried about your traditions. We also talked about the essence of the law, or specifically the Sabbath law. What was it really about? Jesus was trying to direct their attention there. His ideas of doing harm or good, destroying or saving life. All about this essence. What's it really about? And we also talked about Jesus' identity in relationship to the law and the Sabbath. So we had a lot of big topics last week. I think there's going to be a lot of big topics we talk about today, possibly. But I wanted to remind us of that because there might be some undercurrents from our Sabbath discussions that have bearing on where we're going today. So just that quick reminder. So I want to start looking at the paragraph in chapter 6, verses 12 through 16. Anybody feel like reading this morning? Kathy, I saw. Okay, go ahead, Kathy. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Kathy. So Luke 6, verses 12 through 16 is what we just read. Let's start with just the bare facts, the details on the page, just so we can all kind of sink into that a little bit. What's some of the facts? What are some of the details that Luke wants us to know here? Just shout out whatever's something you're seeing. Okay, Jesus prayed all night before taking these steps. I think that's a good point. Other facts. Just what are the details you see on the page here? Okay. Well, he chose. Yeah. Who he called what? Okay. So it seems like there's a bigger crowd that come to him. And then he points 12 fingers and calls these guys apostles. Okay. Other facts or details you're seeing? Okay, renames them. Explain that, Tom. Okay. Okay. Some of those details are interesting. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I just want to note, like, they're almost all provided without commentary, except for, like, there's different names attached to them. Simon was identified as a zealot. We learn about the fathers of some of these guys. And Judas, Luke tells us, became a traitor. Interesting details. I want to talk about that in a little bit, but I want to just, before we get to reflections, observations, questions, interpretations, all that, let's just start with what's here on the page. Anything else that we want to pull out? Yes, Scott.
So there's a greater group of disciples.
Yes.
Probably a larger crowd
Mm-hmm.
of people who are his followers, who are followers.
Yeah. Good point. Big group, more select group taken from that. Okay. Well, let's move beyond that. Let's just, that helps us all get on the same page, I think, about what we're seeing here. Observations, questions, interpretations. What in the world is Luke trying to tell us with this? Roll call. It's cool, let's just get some names out there. Or is it simple trivia that will make sense later on? What's going on? Yeah, Alan, then Sean.
It seems like, Jesus has decided what they should do all along. These are the guys I'm going to invest with. These are the guys who's going to carry on work.
Okay. Why? Any thoughts about that? John?
We're just going to take from it. He is picking 12, and these are the guys that everything hinges upon. Him dying on the cross and them taking that to the world. They don't succeed in that. Everything fails. And in a practical sense, you can only mentor one-on-one with a small number. You can't be a mentor to 100. Even 12 is hard.
Yeah. What do you think that says about these individuals, maybe? If we just want to read between the lines a little bit. Does it say anything? Randy?
I don't know if it says anything or not, but there's an interesting distinction, I think, that's made between disciples and apostles here.
Okay.
It's that there's a larger body of followers, there's a larger body of people who are students of Jesus and whatnot. But these are individuals that, I can't remember the terminology, what apostle stands for, I think sent out or something along that line. So these are people that are given special standing in that moment. That these are people not only that are students, but these are people that will be tasked with something beyond being just a student. And so I think that differentiation there is important. And when you couple that with what goes on in the rest of the gospel, when you see the body of disciples ebb and grow as time goes on, like, when they're feeding 5,000, that's great, but all of a sudden they're down to a few and whatnot. These are the core.
Mm-hmm.
Where these gentlemen display a degree of faith that maybe the rest of the disciples don't.
Okay. I like your distinction. In my mind, this is sort of the first chance or indication that Jesus is expecting more than just people following him around all the time. You 12, turn around and go back out. Go do something. I'm sending you out. So there is this, disciple pulling this idea of learner, follower. In this, it's turn around and send y'all back out. And it doesn't mean that not everybody can do that, but it feels like it's a shift in the story. Finding these 12 people and saying, you are my envoys, you are my representatives or my messengers. So yeah, it's a really interesting distinction that shows maybe a shift in how Jesus is seeing what he's doing here on this earth. Yeah.
I don't always quite know what to do with this detail, but it does seem like there are concentric circles around Jesus. There's the disciples, or maybe we first would say the crowds, right? People who just follow him because they have a kind of generic interest in him. They see the miracles. There's the ones called disciples. There's now this inner circle among the disciples that he calls apostles. Even beyond this, Jesus is often going to take Peter, James, and John out from that group as a even further distinction. And then he's going to give the keys of the kingdom to Peter again. So there's these increasingly close responsibilities that Jesus places on certain people, and I don't always quite know what to do with that detail. But this one, it's interesting because it's Matthew, Mark, and John. Peter, Mark, and Luke, at least, all take time to name the 12, and sometimes the names are a little bit different, but they name 12, and that 12 really seems to have something to do with the 12s that come up in the Old Testament. I don't want to get too far into maybe something you can say, but it's this Jesus saying, like, I'm sort of creating the new Israel. I'm doing something new that's connected to the old, and the number itself seems to have some significance.
Yeah, I read one thing that said to the early Christians it wasn't so much the names that mattered, but the number. I'm going to say both matter. We'll talk about that. But anybody get that, that tingling feeling when they heard 12? 12 people, 12 special people. Where have we heard that before? It almost slaps you in the face with how evident that connection could be. Now let's connect that to what we talked about last week with this idea of, there's this Sabbath law that has its roots that is more than just what the religious leaders are making of it. Let's strip all that back and kind of get back to the essence of it. And now Jesus is selecting 12 special people, and what we're going to see is going to happen next. What's he going to do with these newly minted apostles and this crowd of people? He's going to start giving them a law to live by. It's interesting parallels here, and this is all stuff we can read into it, but I do think it's really interesting, it's like he's making a statement somehow.
I don't want to read that I don't want to read too much into it, but God challenged the people of Israel to realize it. And that's what we're going to find Jesus challenges
Yeah. Let's think about the people in particular. Have we met any of these folks before? We got 12 named. I know I had to go back and look, but a couple of class periods. Brian, go ahead.
Peter, Andrew, James, and John were the fishermen.
Okay.
Did immense catch.
In early chapter 5.
Matthew was called as a tax collector.
And he was called Levi earlier, so assuming these are the same guys, they traditionally are. We've met some of them, so we've got anybody else? I think that's it that we've met up to this point. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so we've met some of these guys. We've got fishermen. We've got a tax collector. We meet Simon, who's called a zealot. My understanding of these people is that they're religious, extremely rigorous adherence to the law, but it could go to the point of violence. They're political extremists at times. How do you think that dude responds to the tax collector? You think they were friends before this? I really doubt it. And here's just another observation for me. Why does Luke feel it's necessary to let us know that Judas Iscariot became a traitor? Everybody knows that, Luke. Is it just like trivia? Is it just like mere foreshadowing, like, hey, this is that guy, don't forget? Or does it mean something? Right.
He was letting the original recipient of this letter know that this was in advance, kind of a spoiler of the story
Okay, Randy, then Belinda.
Well, in my translation, it says, who became a tree. And so it's forward-looking, it's not in the immediate.
Mhm.
And stuff in the immediate, I think Judas Iscariot probably had, after Jesus said the rest of them looked to it, and perhaps he wasn't just a guy from the onset that was bad, but down the road, something changed in him, he became who he was. But that's saying at the moment when the selection occurred, I don't think you could look at him and go, he's a traitor. And so,
Okay, Belinda.
He begins because Judas, son of James, and Judas Iscariot who also became a traitor. So there was two Judases, and there's a distinction between the two.
Mm-hmm. Why isn't, I just think it's interesting that Jesus didn't go into Jerusalem and pick out 12 good ones. You know, he's been dealing with plenty of bad ones, but we know that there are some like Nicodemus that, you know, why didn't he go and pick out the good teachers, the good ones? Okay, so. Okay. Looking at the hearts, Christine.
It follows the pattern throughout God's entire story. Picking the most unlikely people, because that way it shows that the power is God's. The power is not with man. It is with God. These people didn't succeed in their missions because they were special, great, wonderful people. They succeeded because God.
Yeah, good observation.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Nicodemus, right? How long did it take Nicodemus? Right, years. You know, we watched that progression in John, where he's got these right scholars believe really young, ready to be discipled by a rabbi. So they're fertile ground for him to bring in. I do also think back to the point about the traitor. It is interesting that Luke is pointing out that Spirit, you know, was involved in picking the one to make sure Jesus anyway.
And that's selected from the religious leaders. We're seeing them selected from all walks of life, and some that might otherwise not have anything to do with each other in any other context.
It's us.
Hold that thought. But yes, it is us. We'll pull that thread into the next paragraph too. The tax collector is the shill of the Roman government. Like, that dude's just being propped up by those horrible people that the zealot would want to destroy by any means necessary. They shouldn't have anything to do with each other until they have this common guy, Jesus, making all that stuff melt away. And even, I'm going to say, my thought about the traitor is these are even imperfect people with the potential to be involved in some pretty sinful stuff down the road. Still chosen. This is definitely going to burst some wineskins, just to get back to 2 weeks ago. That new wine being poured into the old wineskins. If you can't handle what Jesus is doing, you're going to explode. Yeah. So who's your Simon? Who's your Levi? Who's your Judas? I'm not telling you to name a specific person, but think about that kind of person that you're like, if I wasn't a Christian and they weren't a Christian, whew, no way. Those aren't my kind of people.
and his selection, like you were talking about, why did he go to Nicodemus and whatnot? Those individuals really thought perhaps that they were the model of what they should be. And
powerful stuff that Jesus is doing here. And challenging, I think. I hope that everybody's challenged by this, because I sure am. Okay, let's keep moving, because we want to see that we're going to get back into the larger concentric circles that Matt was talking about. Verses 17 through 19. Anybody feel up for reading that? Randy, thank you.
And he descended with them and stood in a level place. And there was a great multitude of his disciples, and a great throng of people from all Judea and Jerusalem, and the coastal region of Tyre and Sidon. And he came to hear him, and to be healed of their disease, and those who were troubled with unclean spirits were being cured. And all the multitude were trying to touch him, for the power was coming from him and healing them all.
Okay, what are our details? What are our facts on the page here that seem important?
It's amazing a lot of different areas these people are coming from.
Okay, where are they coming from, Jerry?
They're coming from Judea and Jerusalem, the seacoast of Tyre and Sidon.
Okay. Big multitude, lots of people, coming from lots of places. Who else is there? Okay, we got sick people. Okay. So it says that they're coming for healings. It says they're also coming to heal him, or coming to hear him. So the teaching, the healings, people are coming for both. There's another crowd of people that's distinguished from the ones that Jerry just mentioned. I want to make sure we see this. It gets back to Matt's comments about the concentric circles. Yeah. Great crowd of disciples. And the great multitude coming from who knows where. And this is happening, see this again, this is happening right after. This reads to me like it's, you 12, you're apostles. All right, let's walk down the hill a little farther. Wow, look at all these people. So he's coming down to more of a level spot on what is traditionally identified as a mountain location. This is setting up for what we identify as the Sermon on the Mount. Any other of the details we want to pull out? There's not a lot here.
Is he still around Galilee? We're looking all the way back to chapter 4.
So I had to Google where the traditional location of the Sermon on the Mount is, and it's around the Sea of Galilee.
So for somebody to come from Jerusalem.
Pretty far. Yeah. Okay, so let's pick at that a little bit. So if you're flipping to the back of your Bible, if you have to look at one of those maps, you'll see that, where the Sea of Galilee is, Jerusalem's a pretty good haul. What about Tyre and Sidon? Pretty far. Other direction. Those are Gentiles, right? These are not people that should be coming from long distances to see Jesus. And yet they're all, technical term here, they're all smushed together around Jesus. So getting back to what Scott was saying, it's us. I want to make sure that we see that when he identifies where they're coming from, that's really, really important, I think. That the story, the popularity of Jesus is just exploding. It's like the apostles kind of become this microcosm maybe of what Jesus' disciples and those in the crowd are standing for, representing. Further observations or questions, like what are some things that are just like hitting you about this? Is there anything? not only did he choose 12 people that weren't coming from the religious leadership, but this whole location screams like place of the people. No Jerusalem, no synagogues, no temple. They're on a hill out in the middle of nowhere, and people are just coming. I mean, it really kind of visually indicates like this is different than all of that. Jerry?
I wonder if it doesn't say, but did he heal everybody or he just heal the ones that touched him?
Yeah. Did he heal everybody or just heal the ones that touched him?
Yeah, the last part of 19 is Jared's point is ambiguous with regards to that. I mean, yeah, the power came, so did the power come off everybody, which I think it did, because it says they were healed, but I think it's fascinating, and Matt can probably help maybe a little more on the Old Testament for this, but so you went through the whole Sabbath law thing, and now Jesus is being made unclean because all these people are touching him, right? So now, how's he doesn't, but like now he's breaking that law
Mm-hmm.
too, because he doesn't say stay away, it's like the woman with the bleeding, fill your ears, and oh, of course, he needs to come. So it's kind of fascinating, and then the whole, the tassels of the rabbi is what they're touching to get that power to come. So I think and it doesn't say it's only the sick. So this is the crowd who's coming to the rabbi's slots, where they're touching the tassels, and those who want to be healed are also touching the rabbi's tassels.
Yeah. Every detail creates more details that you want to know. In the interest of moving on, just here's a question as I'm reflecting on the distance that people are traveling, just very simply either to hear him or get healing. What have you done, and what would you be willing to do to seek out Jesus and either hear him or be healed? And by that I mean, well, you made it here this morning. Is that good enough? Is that in the spirit of some of these people? I know for myself that's hits me a little bit to think, well, yeah, absolutely, do I have to go farther than a half hour?
Gotta go to Great Falls.
Gotta go to Great Falls. It's harder in Montana when everything's so spread out. Somebody had a hand here. Yeah, Donna. It is interesting they couldn't get on the internet and just Google real fast. Like, what will I see when I get to this mountain? Like, what's this guy going to do? We can...
How would you even get there? I think about it, right? It's not like, oh, I just pulled up Google Maps, and I think you would get and Jesus has a GPS. There's some effort involved.
Yeah, I think this is a good point, though, just the uncertainty that they would have to deal with. It's really easy for us to be like, I'm going to go see a museum in Great Falls or something like that. You can know exactly what to expect and get there and get back and all that. And this is going to take some commitment to the unknown. It's just, there's geographical effort involved in doing this. And, I'm not sitting here saying, have you driven 2 hours to go to a special Bible study in the past year? Something like that. That could be an example of it, but also, intellectually, how much real effort do you put in? Is it something in the spirit of what these folks are doing? Or is it, well, I got my daily Bible reading schedule, and I spent 20 minutes on that this morning. I'm good. I fall into that.
I think desperate people do desperate things.
Hmm.
And I think people who are looking for truth will go find it. And most of us are not desperate enough. Most of us are not keen enough to find the truth. To go do anything.
Okay. There was a hand here, Randy.
I was just gonna say, the thing that I've looked at a moment too, like this, when we do that, is that perhaps the hope that we have outweigh the uncertainty. That there's a certain uncertainty about what I'm gonna find when I get there, but there's a hope that there's something that's tangible there when I get there. And if that hope is compelling enough, then it would motivate you to be able to want to make that journey or undertake that type of travel. And I think in our world today, there's not a lot of hope. There's not a lot of things we look to with hope. And we've become, I think, numb to a lot of the things that inspire hope in us. And so, I don't want to say we're callous, but maybe a little jaded. And we see some things in our world all around us all the time that people gravitate to. And you kind of go, I've been promised so many things so many times, I just don't know if I want to make another journey.
Good point. Glenda?
I don't know why this popped in my head, but, if it's important to you, you will travel, you will go. I think of all the kids from Montana that have traveled to go to Christian colleges. There's not one here, so you go to Oklahoma, you go to Tennessee, you go to Texas, because it's important to them. And so I kind of think maybe that's why some of these people travel, because it's important.
I think that's a good transition for where we're going next here. Thinking about what's important, where you put your values. And Jesus is going to say, your values are totally wrong, everybody. So let's look at verses 20 through 26. We're not going to be able to spend a lot of time on this because of our closing time, but we'll at least get started. Verses 20 through 26. Anybody up for reading that? Sean, go ahead. Thank you.
Looking at his disciples, he said, "Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who hunger now, for you will be satisfied. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. Blessed are you when men hate you, when they exclude you and insult you, and reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man." How far am I going?
26.
Rejoice in that day and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven. For that is how their fathers treated the prophets. But woe to you who are rich, for you have already received your comfort. Woe to you who are well fed now, for you will go hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you will mourn in youth. Woe to you when all men speak well of you, for that is how their fathers treated the false prophets.
Just because of our time, let's just open it up to reactions. I'll say this, going all the way back to our first verse, Jesus spends all night in prayer. We connected it to the choosing of the 12. But think about all the things that have transpired. There's a lot that Jesus was praying about. I got to imagine, let's not lose sight of the fact, well, he's choosing these 12 guys. Then he's going to be touched by all these people all day. And then he's going to speak to them, and he's going to deliver the most countercultural message that any of them have ever heard. He's a popular guy. Some of these people are coming to hear a message maybe that they want to hear, and he's going to give them something that they need to hear, and totally different things at times. So just placing it in that greater context, he knew what was coming. He was prepping for it. It's more than just choosing the 12. A lot of really important stuff's happening here. So what do you all see in here? What's interesting? Yeah, Christina, go ahead.
I think it's a message that if you're not having to travel to hear the message, if you're not sick, if you're not poor, if you are living this comfortable life, then you are called not to seek the same things, but to go to those people, to help those people. And that's going to require a lot of effort and dedication. And it's going to require you to be uncomfortable.
Okay. Other thoughts? Anybody feel uncomfortable reading that right now? Probably should, even though we know it. I meant to say, try to approach this like you're hearing it for the first time as we were reading it. Because maybe we get used to these Beatitudes. Yeah, I know what those are. But it should make us highly uncomfortable. Okay. Okay. Other thoughts? Al?
I was thinking it's interesting that the one verse in particular, verse 26, woe to you and then speak well of you. And you just take that sentence alone, it's kind of like, well, that's pretty I suppose it's required to speak well of you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good question sort of overall. Like, he doesn't automatically say, well, if you're comfortable in life, then too bad, you're going to have to be uncomfortable. And then automatically, if you're uncomfortable, well, then you're great. That's great. There's the pivot in that verse you're talking about, 22, about on account of the Son of Man. And so it feels like we have to have this with a little bit of qualification. And yet the people that Jesus are calling, I mean, these are the kind of things that life that they're going to have to accept on account of the Son of Man. And what he's saying is, that's okay. In fact, that's better than okay. That's great if you do this because of me.
Well, it's, you asked us to put ourselves in this situation. I mean, so you have two different groups of people here. You count Gentiles, Jewish, and then the elite, which Jerusalem's mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're the person who just got healed, somebody who's poor, somebody who's just lucky and wants to be here, I don't think you're struggling with any of this, and then by the end of it, you're like, yeah, that's right. But if you're an elite from Jerusalem who comes and hears this, you're like, oh, he's hitting me directly. Even though he's talking about everybody. I mean, right? I mean, you call it a pivot, but 23 is a pivot too.
Sure.
So, I mean, it depends who you are when you're doing it. If you just got healed, you're like, yeah, now I understand what it means to be healed and blessed.
Yeah, and it's weird I like Matt's image of concentric circles here, because in verse 20 he very specifically says he's looking at his disciples. But it doesn't mean that the rest of them aren't hearing it too, so it's almost like, well, you guys can listen to this, but I got words for you people that have been following me everywhere. Let's get our values straight. And I think that's maybe just to connect this, we're just about out of time, maybe to connect this back to the essence of the Sabbath law kind of concept. Like, what's it really there for? Well, are we meant now to take this and sort of bullet point it and say, all right, yeah, I was hungry today, physically and spiritually, I'm good? Or are we meant to look at this in terms of principles? What are these emblematic of what Jesus wants people to understand. And where I'm at with that is there's this now versus later mentality. There's this reversal of values, totally everything, taking everything you value and flipping it on top of your head, on upside down. Or some might say right side up, I guess, because we're the ones that mess it up. And that's all on account of the Son of Man. And so it's almost like we got to be really careful, and they probably had to be really careful taking that and taking notes and being like, all right, I got something to work on this week, dot, dot, dot. What does it really stand for? What does it really mean? And I think that's the sort of stuff that he's going to elaborate on as this sermon progresses. Back to the disciple or the apostles, I just wonder if this gets to the reason why he chose them on some level. He saw this in them, at least on that day. And that sort of feeds back into his decision-making process. Yeah.
Something you said really hit me, which is, and I've been thinking about this for a while, which is, we tend to think that Jesus' teaching is for everyone, which it is, but it really is for the people who believe. Okay? And when he says, he looked at his disciples, he was, certainly everybody was hearing what he had to say, but the people who truly believed that he was who he said he was telling them, you need to look at the world differently than you've always had. And you've always thought that the people in the second half of the woes were the people blessed by God, but I'm telling you something different. And so the word to us as disciples is also listen to the words of Jesus for us. He's talking to us, not to the world as a whole.
Good place to end. Randy's going to lead us in prayer, and then we're going to be dismissed.